Welcome to the Marshall McAdam Data, Analytics and AI podcast, where data leaders in Australia drop by to share their experiences and insights. I'm delighted today to be joined by Pooyan Asgari, Chief Data Officer of Domain Group. Today, Pooyan and I are going to explore decentralized analytics and then explore AI in relation to large quality data sets. We'll get into that right after this.
Welcome to the Marshall McAdam Data and Analytics podcast, where Australian business leaders and experts discuss the data challenges facing organisations today and the opportunities for innovative business in the future. Let's get the conversation started.
Pooyan, welcome. Absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
We'll give you the now customary virtual applause. Great to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about today, a lot to cover in your capacity as Chief Data Officer of Domain.
Yes, Domain Group Australia.
Absolutely. And in the prep, you've given a couple of really interesting subjects for us to cover. One is around decentralized analytics and the other around AI in relation to large-scale data quality. So we'll get to all of that very soon. But before that, let's hear about the Pooyan behind the job title.
Sure.
You shared some good facts here. So first of all, apparently you won't say no to any data request.
That's basically my job title, to not say no to any data request.
So just say yes to everything. Yep.
Yes.
That's a good attitude to have. Now, on a slightly more straightforward note, or straightforward to say and probably hard to do, you tell me, what does the figure 400 mean to you?
Look, I'm with Domain for Domain Australia, this fantastic business for almost 6 years. And one of those times that I was exercising my rights of not saying no to anything was a question that whether we can entertain part of the staff by preparing food, barbecues, etc., etc. And actually, by saying yes to that, we ended up of serving more than 400 people every year in a traditional annual Persian barbecue.
So if I were lucky enough to ever receive an invite to that barbecue,
sure.
What sounds unlikely.
401.
What would I be eating? What are the traditional Persian dishes?
Oh, there are many actually, but there is a quite famous dish. The Persian name of that is ghormeh sabzi, which is basically
ghormeh sabzi.
Exactly. So if you have a Persian friend anywhere in this country, which I think you'll find it easy to find one.
Yes, yeah.
That would be probably the one that recommend you to try. It's a kind of a stew and mixed with rice, etc. But it's absolutely a masterpiece.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. Well, much I would love to talk about. I think it's ghormeh sabzi.
Fantastic, correct pronunciation. Yeah,
that's good. Those Persian lessons are coming in handy. We need to talk about data and analytics. That's why we're here. So let's go to your first subject, decentralized analytics.
Sure.
And I think ultimately this all sits in the context of a journey you've been on and continue to be on with Domain. What is decentralized analytics, or what are decentralized analytics?
In nutshell, it means that let's avoid one single bottleneck or point of failure in a business that any data request or request for insight or analytics has to go through that or not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's decentralized analytics try to mitigate that risk by a distribution of power to answer analytical questions to functions out of the data function.
Okay. Yeah.
For example, it would be like the marketing, finance, sales operations, products, and so on. They should be able to independently get to the answer of certain questions that they need without waiting in a queue for a very highly sought after data expert necessary. Spend some time and answer it. So this is easy on surface, but it could be complicated in implementation. But the correct implementation is absolutely a key unlock in terms of answering today's requirements of data-driven businesses to shorten the time between the moment you need data and the moment that you, let's say, get access to it. I always, it's a very maybe a distant analogy, but I always compare the role of the data function in the business to how a successful restaurant has to operate.
Okay. Yeah.
So as a customer, if you go to a restaurant, no matter how delicate is the food that you're going to be served with, there is a certain amount of time that you are willing to wait until the food being served to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then after that, most of the experience either gone, you lost your appetite, or you're already out of the door, and you're moving to your next thing in the day. So a successful restaurant, or here in our example, is a data function, is the one that from the moment you put an order or think about a certain meal or a data piece here, to the moment that you receive it and you start using it, it gets minimized. Sometimes if you go to your memories, you see that some of the interesting experience you had was not necessarily because you've been served amazing food, because you sat there and literally before you finish your order, something been served to you, and said, "Wow, this is amazing customer service."
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just backtracking slightly. So the one of the rationales there for decentralized analytics, there's two or three things in there. One is to avoid a single point of failure.
Yeah.
The other is to avoid this sort of bottleneck scenario where people are queuing for their metaphorical data meal or analytical meal. Is there a third piece there, which is that if you head off down the path of having a decentralized model, that it's actually far more engaging for the end user in sales, marketing, etc., to actually feel a connection to
Absolutely.
To what's happening?
So look, the questions that being asked are usually, this is if you ask any data expert that worked in the field enough, they will let you know. When a leader in a marketing or like a sales director or something, when they ask a question, there are chances, which is quite high there, that question is, the answer to that question is not exactly what they're after. The questions that come up after the initial question is those key actionable insight that are after. Like literally, like the first question, I'll give you an example, and I'll come back to your question, answering your question. When a sales director says, I want to know what is the distribution of our revenue per, let's say, suburb or selling some, warehouse or whatever, in past 12 months. That looks like a legitimate question. It can come to a central function in the data BI team, etc., and a few days later an answer or report goes back. The actual action that happens after that is the subsequent question that, oh, wow, some of these numbers are quite high and some of them are quite low. I want to now know why these 5 certain selling or shops or the warehouses have outperformed others. So now back to your question, that what would be the engagement look like here? This is it. If that sales director in practice asks the first question and takes a few days, and then now have more questions, and each of those questions takes another few days, etc. The moment is gone. There are other crises happening. The pace of the movement of this, the industries are just not 1990s anymore. You come up with a completely new problem to solve every other week. So now you see that if the location or the place that the question is being answered is literally the next desk to the sales director rather than next floor in the building, that turnover of answering question, etc., sometimes even doesn't need an email. That sales director can have a casual conversation with the person to his light. And usually only very complicated problems should find its way to that.
It's interesting. You've made me think there. I had a good chat with Shira Saga, who's now at Latitude Financial and was previously the chief data officer at the Iconic.
Absolutely.
One of the things Shira was striving for was he wanted people to step up, I think, and ask increasingly difficult questions. Because I think, sort of anecdotally, he felt the questions people ask from the floor, from sales, marketing, etc., they perhaps feel is a difficult question, but is not even close to what the capability is.
Absolutely.
So how do you instill that discipline where people can really ask the really curly stuff?
Look, you can ask questions when you don't know what is possible to begin with, right? So one of the things that is an unlock to this, and I love that thing, that this topic that you just brought up. This is spot on. The point is that if the person who actually let's say a leader or no matter what who in a business that have a critical question to ask, if they know what is it on the menu as an ingredients that can be used to prepare, their questions can be more and more difficult, etc.
Yeah, right.
I if you allow me, I go back to my restaurant
analogy. Anything food related, I'm on board. That's good. It's all good.
Look. You can look at the menu and order something, which is your question, or you can really go to the next level if you have access to every ingredient available in the kitchen.
Yes.
Say, can you give me something using these 25 different ingredients? And that's a different challenge, right?
Absolutely.
So this is it. Like the visibility that we provide of what is available, the data discovery concept that is quite a hot topic trend these days, is a big unlock in this space. That like how we can, as part of the onboarding and education process and communication in a business, how can we inform our leaders of what is possible, what is available, what is new in the inventory, and then let them start using them to form their question. Now, the point is that this stuff has certain orders into it. So I just want to come back to decentralized conversation.
Yes.
You can't just go and basically tease or I don't know, challenge, bring this, open up the floodgates of questions to your leaders in an organization if you're not ready to serve them on time.
Absolutely.
Right. So again, when you come back, you see that why this topic of democratizing data and decentralizing analytics capability is such a big could be a big blocker or unblocker in a business. Just in a summary, I would say I completely support that process. But I would say that as part of the prep work for a business, you have to be ready to serve what you basically put out for order.
Yes, if you've put a special on the menu, you've got to be ready to serve it.
Yeah.
Understood. So you've touched on this, you've sort of said, these days and now, and you've talked about progress and the speed of progress. So one of the things we touched on when preparing for today's chat was, you posed a question, why was this approach not possible historically? What's changed?
Let's just put it this way. So the topic of decentralized analytics on its surface is not just, let's just form teams out of data team, and it's not going to work like that. Those it includes a lot, of course, training and a lot of finding your data heroes that going to be the ambassadors of data within the business, and then start forming people and creating the work. All is something that was possible in past as well.
Yes, okay.
But the reason that it wasn't really get the traction that these days some of the more progressive businesses are trying in this space was the infrastructure and technology that needs to empower this process.
Yep.
So we in a nutshell, like we have two types of data, of course, like highly aggregated and raw data. Just if I want to just put it in the simplest way. So the power of raw data means that you can ask any question, or let's call it like literally from the data, because you have access to the lowest grain of data.
Yes, okay, yeah. Okay?
So let's say, for example, clickstream data, or for example, transaction level data, or log records, etc. So a user that comes to domain portals in a session, they leave over 5,000 data points. Wow. In a span of 15 minutes, and they leave. Okay. So it's just you can just imagine that 5,000 little details. It could be from which part you clicked, or what sort of interaction you had with what component, up to the minutes that you spend on each section, how did you scroll, what was your flow of, all those stuff. Roughly 5,000
and where you went from one point to the next.
Exactly.
And when you exited and all
Absolutely,
this stuff.
right?
Yeah,
So it's not unique to domain. I'm just coming with a number.
It's fascinating.
So 5,000 little digital fingerprints you leave in just a span of 15-minute session, average session. So now, the point is that if a data specialist, a data analyst, access to all of these 5,000 for every few million people that visit domain portal, the type of question you can answer is completely different versus if we aggregate this 5,000 fingerprint of the user and roll it up to one record,
yes.
right? So the highly aggregated data is fast to inquiry, but is very limited in terms of the depth of question you can answer with. So historically, any data that could be shared out of the central data team environments was this highly aggregated data.
Right.
The reason for that was there was not enough processing power. There was not a good enough technology that allow us to open access of a few hundred of thousands of people in an organization for concurrently get access to billions of records, which just been generated in a span of a month. Like there was absolutely no data warehousing technology were out there to support that level of. So you basically would say, okay, yeah, sure, you want to get access, let's just get an aggregated version. And that wouldn't really unlock the problem.
So in a role such as yours, it must be exciting that the processing power has caught up with your ambitions or your capabilities. It's now supporting.
Yeah, and genius minds that actually coming up with new solutions and new problems. Like I guess last year you heard like one of the largest floats in U.S. stock market was Snowflake.
Yes.
Like it just was, and Snowflake or domain was either very first or one of the very first customers of Snowflake in Australia.
Yes.
And you would now probably know the answer why. Because Snowflake and the products like Snowflake, that not many at the moment, but Snowflake is the pioneer in that space, are those that actually creating that unlock that we need.
Yes, I understand, yes.
Because there is no issue now with concurrency. I can open 5 billion record table to 500 people if I want to, as long as the data governance and security is assured.
So is processing power no longer a limiting factor?
No.
It doesn't need to, because I think anecdotally, doesn't computing power double every 2 years, I think, or whatever that rule is. So it's actually about the genius mind application now, the Snowflakes of the world, etc. And Snowflake, we're starting to see greater market penetration with clients.
Yeah.
But funny enough, in the last week, I've been working on a role that requires some Snowflake exposure. And actually, it's still not that prevalent in Australia.
Yeah.
You guys are pioneers, one or two other organizations. But it's obviously got a lot of headroom still. Just looking at these notes here. So it's worth looking at the key steps for an organization to achieve scale in analytics via a decentralized model. Perhaps this might be the time to talk a little bit about the journey you've seen with Domain.
Sure.
Because I think it's a fairly stellar transformation, isn't it, that you've essentially guided?
Yes. And I guess I shared variation of this story in different conferences, places that I spoke at different time. And it clicked really well with whoever were the audience, because this is literally a typical dream journey that any business wants to go through it. And we were lucky enough for many reasons that everything came together so we can achieve it. So I joined Domain as around early 2015. And at the time, the chief product officer of the group was probably the person who actually realized that this is the time that data should come forefront of this business. And I was in touch with this gentleman.
So when was this? Sorry, this was
2015, 14, 15.
14, 15, okay.
Yeah, 5 to 6 years.
So actually not that long ago.
No.
But a long time in the world of data.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And yes, and the conversation at the time was like, a Domain at the time was a fast-growing business, but it was a child company or a subsidiary of the famous Fairfax Media. So they were reliant on some of the functionality that business would deliver, but there was very little, or I would say potentially with today's standards, zero data capability in-house. Right.
Okay.
So the idea was that we build these data capabilities. We make sure that we take the business to the standards because the business was growing quite fast, but they were missing a lot on this sort of pipelines and behind-the-scene capabilities, etc. So fast forward from 2015, with probably 4 or 5 potential analysts in a business that they would prepare reports in potentially Excel files every quarter, mainly like high-level reports that could be used for management purposes, and a business of potentially 300 people at the time. To 2 to 3 years later, that the business moved to like 600 to 700 people, and then now suddenly we had 60% of the entire business have direct access to data through visualization platforms such as Tableau, and other ways of like mode analytics and other ways, and becoming one of the most data-driven, data literate businesses in the sector. So it was a massive transformation in a very short period of time. And look, domain has become like I don't know if I want to use the term poster child or something of some of these actual applications that we use, because it was a great example that, look, hey, if a business used our technology and got there, but technology was absolutely important. Snowflake, Tableau, Mode, all these technologies absolutely important. But the critical part of this process was that mindset of, let's just, restaurant management mindset. So which we make sure that we never say no to any data request.
Yes.
We make sure that people get trained. Well, I guess in a span of 3 years, we had more than 300 data workshops, half-day workshops, a couple of hours workshops across the entire country. We have offices on all states. And make sure that our sales managers, our sales account managers, our marketing data heroes, they were going and meeting clients with insights that was just literally as fresh as midnight last night about the trends of the real estate market, and it was eye-popping. Like, this is one of the strengths of Domain, actually, that we are not selling product. We are actually, this is the philosophy of our sales department, that we are consulting and help them to grow their business. And this is one part of that. Like they take the data, they just answer any question that any, let's say, real estate agent or major investors in the market, etc., have with data, because now they have access. They don't need to even tell us. Yeah. Oh yeah, like this is a Jurassic Park moment that you suddenly realize that, wow, what's happening here? What did I create? So the problem completely shifted from availability of data to the data governance and other matters. But anyway, so and then
sorry, just on that point you mentioned earlier, but let's let the listeners and the viewers hear. So your access to the Australian population is something like 80% coverage, is that right?
True, because Domain has a lot of different portals and so on. So the third-party independent tracking numbers indicates that we reach out to the 80% of the population on different levels, like from simply the news and content could be part of it to the actual property seekers and so on.
Right,
yes.
Fantastic, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. So the summary here is that, like, so this fast-growing process doesn't come cheap or with no consequences. So the immediate consequence, it's a great problem to have for any business, right?
Absolutely.
So the number one thing that slow you down is now, we had an issue to begin with. The issue was there was no demand for data. Now we have triggered massive demand. And now how can we cope up and we do not lose the customers that they were love with data, because, the quality of the service is going to be degraded, right?
Yeah.
So the conversation that we started today about decentralized BI is basically the idea that when you get to a certain point in your growth path, a business or a data leader needs to start thinking and planning that, okay, the next phase is not hiring and doubling the central analytics or data science or BI team. That's literally the critical cliche mistake.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Not only expensive.
Yeah.
Not only is hard these days to find like double up your size of a team in a year.
It's
just
exceptionally hard. I mean, that's the reason why guys like us exist. It's exceptionally hard to find the talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the very tricky part of a business to go for, I don't know, using remote teams or distributed teams, overseas service, etc., because of all of the privacy laws of the data if you're playing with sensitive data. So literally it's a perfect storm for creating demand without having a plan for supply, right? So the idea is that we need to really start recruiting as data leaders inside different functions, find those talents that are really love data beyond their general work, and then they basically make them data heroes, and they use them and plant them as first seeds of the distributed analytics.
So it's a little like opening a sister restaurant.
Very good.
Essentially.
Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly.
That's the best I could do in the restaurant analogy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Or if, we use so much of restaurant analogy today, or we pivot our perfect restaurant to a Persian in a Korean barbecue. So people start cooking the food on their table rather than asking the chef to always come there.
Absolutely brilliant.
Look, I'm pretty sure it's just all logical. And the analogies just make it a little bit more funny. But it's all logical that you really can't just buy scale by making the teams bigger, but you have to make sure as a data leader to tap on the existing in-house potentials.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you talk to me about AI and the large-scale data quality.
Okay, so let's just touch on something here. So I'm part of the domain leadership team, and domain is a pioneer in this space, in this industry. It's just quite known that we are always trying to really working on some sort of cutting edge technology that can help our consumer as well as our real estate agent customers.
May I just ask you something, which hopefully is not sensitive? Why are you at the cutting edge? Is it you, or is it the board, or is it all of the above?
Actually, I was about to talk about that. Which is a very interesting question. That's what I want to say. And this is all about the mindset that our business has. Okay, so the mindset is the number one driver of a business that you want to move to the space of AI and why you want to do it. So, our CEO, Jason Pellegrino, who took the leadership of the business, is absolutely AI first kind of a mindset. Like he is one of those leaders that are actually I remember from day one, even before he has started his job, like before moving to Domain as the CEO of Domain, he was the director of Google Australia. So I guess that's enough to give why he could be quite very serious in AI conversation. Yep. So it's very from the top.
But I think we'll see more of that. I think we'll see leaders increasingly coming from that sort of world,
absolutely,
as opposed to historically where CEOs used to traditionally be from perhaps a finance background, perhaps sales and marketing, perhaps legal even, or general business. But I think we'll see this shift.
So this is it. So this is basically how the perfect storm shapes. Like for Domain we were one of those early ones that we have a leader that actually from day one is completely equipped with all the knowledge required that why AI is important, why AI is the mix, rather than like, let's say a data function wants to educate, I don't know, like senior leaders in a business. It wasn't the case for our business. So that means that we have this major push from management and up that we need to really explore the space of AI. Okay, so this basically leads to a few development in terms of planning for any business, including Domain in this example. So we're dealing with huge volume of data. Some of this data we are completely in control of how we collect the data and how we vet the quality of the data.
Okay.
But a big part of the data assets that Domain owns is the data that we collect from the development in the real estate property market.
Yep.
In how like the information about like millions of properties in Australia that like few percent of them, around 3% of them actually changes significantly every year. Like if you don't do anything with the property data in Australia, 3% of your data is completely wrong every year.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So by just changes in the type of property, etc. Another 5 to 6% of the data become relatively inaccurate because of all of the development applications and changes and renovation, etc. Plus many more kind of like urban plannings and etc. Like literally, this is an ever-going, fast-paced, changing set of data.
And then you throw in a shock like COVID, and I'm guessing that has an impact as well.
That's just, you can imagine, right? So just dealing with a scenario as a business, which Domain is one of these typical businesses, that we are dealing with fast-paced changing set of data that the models and the products or the technology that are based on AI cannot safely rely on the fact that the data that we trained our model 2 years ago are going to be the same 2 years later.
Yes,
right?
okay.
So this is a summary of this the challenge. So it creates this new challenge, that how can we assure that the quality of the data in the mass scale can be looked after in parallel with the pace of the technology and a new way of dealing and modeling and AI solutions and data science solutions.
And what you're saying is, in essence, looked after in real time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we come to this kind of like a very hot trend these days. How can AI actually first look after the data quality before data looked after data, data after AI?
Yes.
If you allow me coming with another analogy,
please do, as long as it's food related.
So I'm from Middle East. My background is Iran, and Iran is and the Middle East is the area known for their oil wells. So this is how it works there, and to make sure that you can extract the maximum value out of any oil well, you have to first inject some of the extracted material from the well back to the well to always maintain the output pressure of those wells. Otherwise, they're going to die. Yep. Right. So this is it. You have to first look after the source of your knowledge before you use what you get out of this for a product, etc.
Yeah. Right.
So this is the very same thing. We have to use AI to control the quality and reliability of the data. Probably even before we start working on more accurate models and so on. So Domain is quite focused in this space. The quality of the data in both property and customer data, we have built to assure that we have built an internal platform internally.
Okay.
We have called it internally, nicknamed this platform PACMAN, because it eats bad data, the way that the Pac-Man old game. And its job is that it's in real time. It basically controls data by applying many different models that has been developed by our data scientists, that the model job is to find anomaly and inaccuracy in data.
Yes, okay.
And it solves one big problem. When you have hundreds of thousands of data records flows into a business like us, it's just up to a point that a manual data quality verification, the classic way of like data quality officers that go through records, etc., can cope up with that volume.
Right.
The AI job is, let's just make the problem small enough that human intervention become a feasible thing.
Right, I see. Okay.
So basically, it's a hybrid model. It's a semi-automated, AI-enabled data quality platform that, unfortunately, it cannot easily become a product that every business should go on out and buy it. Maybe in future, at least, it's very hard to generalize.
Well, I was about to ask you exactly that. So you're developing PACMAN.
Yes.
In-house, or are you working with an external? Completely in-house.
Completely in-house. So a group of data scientists. Instead of actually doing their work, which is the data science to creating products, their job is to building models that constantly improve or actually find issues in data.
Oh, brilliant. And sorry, do you then see, I'm just going to keep saying Pac-Man because you've brought back a great memory from my childhood.
Yep.
So Do you then see PACMAN as something that you absolutely keep in-house and it's a competitive advantage, or do you potentially see external commercial opportunity in it?
It's well, at the moment and for foreseeable future it's completely IP for domain.
Yeah, okay.
It's, and it's and the use case of such platform, which I believe every business that dealing with a similar problem should somehow at some certain point start thinking about building an in-house version of this. Is that it's just not about like what if data is correct or not correct. When you build an extensive data quality platform, then you can mount or deploy models that find fraud, find illicit activities, flag them, find issues with any sort of abuse of platforms that our business here basically running, and also finding all sorts of problems with data. Could be from basic typos in certain data sets that arrives at domain, up to illogical simple issues, to the point that actually we use image recognition, we use natural language processing, analyzing the context of property data.
I was just thinking that with your natural language past, actually, it comes full circle, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And all together become suddenly, okay, this particular record has 96.5% chance that has an incorrect item in it, and then it gets surfaced for a manual verification.
Right, I see.
Or if it's 100%, is automatically get patched and fixed.
Yeah.
And potentially, if only 5% chance that the model assign an issue with a record, potentially we can actually take that risk and let it into our warehouses. So this is how we in terms of like some of those use cases, such as fraudulent activities, fair evasions, problems that we have in a certain part, actually good 7 figures of savings has been produced by this immediate use of this service.
In such a fast-moving industry, in such a fast-moving sector, and in a fast-moving company, what's on your agenda? What does success look like for you in the next 12 months?
So longest story short is, you ask me what looks like success. My answer is working for a business that actually touches the heart and life of Australians. We, as someone who is in love with data and the use case of AI and data, I hope that we can get very soon to the point that we can help our audience to make have more confidence, basically, to making their day-to-day decisions when it comes to the real estate and they're one of the most important decisions in their life. And that's our goal. We are working on initiatives and plans and as a business to make sure that if I walk when I'm retired, I don't know, 30 years from now.
Next year.
And I have a casual conversation with a fellow Australian, and I said, I worked at Domain. I get a pat in the back and says, wow, Domain helped me to actually find a nice home for my family.
And it's an interesting point to sort of bring to a close, really, which is you've covered a lot, and I think it'd be fascinating for data leaders and others who are on similar journeys, embarking on similar journeys, struggling on similar journeys. Is there any further advice you would give to people?
So if I want to just list a couple of at least 4 key things that need focus for any business leader and make sure that they all come together to help them to move forward their business, is the leadership management and push, which we were lucky that literally our board and our leadership team is completely on behind that. The constant training, and by say constant is not onboarding. Constant training means literally bringing everyone and having interactive data interpretation sessions rather than use of tools and etc.
I think you mentioned earlier you went through 300 as an organization.
And it's not about how to use the tool, because you can teach people to how to use this tool. It's just like how to read data, how to find out there is no bad data. Data is always good. It's just important that how you read it. And the third bit is that the right choice of technology and infrastructure that is fit for your business, and think long term for that. And the fourth bit is the correct strategy on the right time. Things like distributed analytics is not a thing for a ground zero business.
Yes.
You first need to create demand and then work for those, plan for those steps. And potentially, like it's not a fifth one, but potentially pivot to AI when you're ready, when you are comfortable with the quality and accuracy of the data that you're delivering to your business. So these are items that I would say, like not having one or two of them in your inventory or checklist create risks for a potential culture shift and success.
Yes, okay. Fantastic. I think that will be hugely beneficial to listeners and viewers. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you'd probably agree. I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but I think you've probably been fortunate as well. There's always an element of luck and timing in life. And it sounds as if you've touched on sort of the perfect storm analogy, along with other analogies, but you've ended up with the right group of people at the right time, haven't you, as well? And it's so powerful.
It is. Look, I went through this little passionate rant about how great is domain, etc. But it's true. It's just like passion is contagious is one of the values in our business and many other businesses. Like people who are actually love working in an organization, they go beyond what they've been asked for when it's necessary, and we were lucky with that. Like if I were in a different environment, I may still manage to achieve a subset of this, but potentially with a very difficult barrier. But like when people are willing to learn and become like data heroes, that's paved the path.
Absolutely. Fantastic. If anybody wants to reach out to you for whatever reason, how do they best connect with you?
I'm sure that anyone can reach out to me through LinkedIn, and domain is completely open to collaboration and conversations and talks and so on. So I'm more than happy to potentially answer to questions or anything that can be shared from me. Would be a pleasure.
Perfect. I get a feeling we've barely touched the surface. There's some fascinating stuff in there, but you mentioned passion. Thanks for being receptive to coming to talk data to me today. Thanks for sharing that passion. And I think the only thing that remains is to make certain I get that barbecue invite.
Oh, you have a seat guaranteed.
I'm 401. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you and your audience for tuning in.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. This podcast was brought to you by Marshall McAdam, creating talent solutions in data, technology, transformation and finance across Australia. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe and share. If you'd like to get in touch with the Marshall McAdam team, simply send an email, visit the website or connect on LinkedIn. Contact details can be found in the description. See you next time.